Hello and welcome to the Wild Winter Women YouTube channel. This, I think, is episode 13. I'm Leah, and tonight my co-host is Erica Betts, and we are here with a daily recording tonight to talk about the Iditarod Trail Invitational, which is taking place right now in Alaska. Two distances in the race, 350-mile and 1,000-mile. 350-mile race has wrapped up. 1,000-mile is still ongoing, and tonight is currently the evening of Thursday, March 6th. And tonight, Eric and I have some very special guests. We have Stacy and Melanie, who just completed the race on foot in the 350-mile distance, finished just a couple of days ago. So it's awesome that they took the time out to be with us tonight, just so soon after finishing the race. And we will get to introductions of them, but maybe first, Erica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Erica Betts. I live in Fairbanks, and hence my introduction to the ITI because I don't know. I joke that I fell in with the wrong crowd when I moved here, and that's how I met these two crazy people, and I love them both to death. And so I'm very excited to hear all about their adventures on the trail. So I want to caveat to our listeners that I will try to keep this professional, but if it devolves into girl talk, I apologize. I have not talked to these two since they got off the trail, and I have tons of questions.
Awesome. Thank you. And Stacy and Melanie, do you want to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your background?
Go ahead, Mel.
My name is Melanie Vriesman. I also live in Fairbanks, lived here for about 20 years. Same as Erica, just kind of fell into the wrong crowd, I guess.
Well, she married into the wrong crowd.
I married into the wrong crowd. Yeah. And started winter ultras back in 2012 and just slowly worked up in distances. And this was second go at the ITI, was stopped short last year due to weather. So came back for a little redemption and got it done.
And fun fact about Melanie is she is the first and so far the only female trifecta competitor in the White Mountains 100. Yes. So we'll get into whether she has similar sights for the ITI now that she's done at least one mode, but we'll save that question for later.
Wonderful. Congrats. Okay, Stacy.
I'm Stacy Fisk, and I've been in Fairbanks for 13 years. I've always been a runner, own a running store here in Fairbanks, and always did ultras, not so much winter ultras. So this kind of appealed to me for something a little different. I too probably got in the wrong crowd. I met more people that did more winter stuff, which is great. And I attempted last year as well, ITI with Melanie, and then had to drop out as well. And came back and finished it up.
Fantastic. How did you each prepare for the race? And did you do a lot of training and preparation together, or were you more separate?
I feel like this year we actually were a little more separate than last year, but still did like our big training runs together. Well, actually, no, I take that back because we do Tuesday, Thursday, early morning runs together. And then seems like maybe about once a month we would try to put together like an overnight trip together, whether out in the White Mountains or here around town, just to try to get some miles in.
Yeah, I mean, Erica was included in that too. She would go run with us and do some overnight trips. So, and then me personally, I probably did a little bit more sled pulling on my own, just because that was probably my weakness besides the actual moving part. But yeah, I think we did a little bit of both.
So Melanie, will you, they both said we all, I think, had visions of the ITI at some point in our heads, but Melanie was the instigator in us actually signing up. So why don't you take folks back to a couple years ago when and I don't know that you invited me, but you said, I'm signing up for the ITI. This is the year. So yeah, tell people how you got to this. It's going to happen one day too. This is it.
Well, I think I kind of hit not a plateau, but just didn't know where to go next. And I think it was back surgery. I had a herniated disc and was laying on the floor for 3 months and wasn't sure how I was going to get going again. And my husband has done the ITI several times, and it seemed like the next step to do. And so as I was laying on the floor with my feet up on the couch, I looked at my husband and I was like, I think I might do the ITI. And he was like, all right. And signed up, and then was just chatting with Erica, on a normal weekday run. I was like, I think I'm going to sign up. And I could see her wheels turning. And I think that all of us had our eye on it, and then it got momentum, and these wonderful ladies were all able and willing, so we went for it.
Yeah, so a little background, 4 of us from Fairbanks towed the line in 2024, and none of us made it to McGrath last year. So 2 people were crazy enough to sign up again and do it this year. So what did you guys, was there a moment when you got past Rainy Pass, you got past the lodge that you were like, oh my gosh, or so, what was it like to get past where you did last year?
I would say, like, when we got there, it was kind of like, oh man, we're going into the unknown now, because, we've seen everything all the way up to Rainy Pass, and we were like, oh gosh, we have no idea what's kind of coming. You hear everything on the trail, what it's going to be like. But yeah, it was great to go into the unknown and see something new that we haven't seen before. So I was really excited, like, this is happening, like, we're moving forward.
I remember being so sad watching people leave Rainy Pass Lodge last year. There were 2 or 3 people, brave souls, that headed out. And I remember watching them leave and feeling very sad, but adding up how many hours we thought it was going to take us to get up and over the pass, and the weather, and some missing equipment that was necessary to go up and over the pass. And so when Stacy and I got ready to leave, I was like, we're taking that trail this morning. We're going to go towards the mountains, and that's what we get to do today.
So speaking of which, did you lose anything on the trail this year?
I didn't lose anything on the trail this year, but there was a misplacement of a very important piece of equipment. I forgot my fuel bottle. Ooh. So I went to go boil water at Shell Lake, which is 100 miles in. And my fuel bottle was nowhere to be found. And of course, the panic is, crap, my race is over again. It's just that feeling of, how could I forget something so important? But I had a great partner there, and Stacy was just like, hey, I got fuel, your race isn't over, like, we can figure it out. So yeah, that was a big mistake, but worked it out.
Yay. So problem solving.
Right, exactly. I picked up a little bit of extra white gas at Rainy Pass. Nice. So that I could at least carry my weight.
So what, I guess, surprises did you have this year after, having done quite a few miles in 2024? What did you learn this year? What was different?
Well, what was different is no snow. Yeah. When at the start there wasn't much snow at Kinnick Lake, and then obviously the burn area, and even past that.
Who cussed more?
What's that?
Who cussed more?
Oh, well, it depends on if it was morning or night.
Yeah, so that's correct. So yeah, I think that was a different challenge in that way. Not in the ice. There was a lot of ice. I think that's why our feet are killing us. I mean, every foot person. I thought it was just me being in studded shoes, but when I talked to Melanie, which I caught up with her, and any other foot individual, we all hated ice by the end. I mean, it was just killed us.
What do you have, like, a favorite section of the trail?
Well, I mean, going up and over the pass was amazing. We had great weather, and on foot, you're just there all day, and you're just climbing and winding through these amazing mountains. And then, yeah, hitting the top of the pass, and that was pretty cool. It was neat. I had been looking
Oh, you
forward
had some great photos.
Yep. Stacy gave poor Donald and Klaus a little run for their money.
A little show.
Yeah.
A little show. Yeah.
Older guys who were up at the pass before us, and before they even turn around and start going down, Stacy's ripping her clothes off. Klaus turns around and he's like, whoa, what is going on back there?
I blame that on Melanie, though, because that was her idea.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned it, so I was like, all right, let's go for it.
I got up there and I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. But Stacy's already down to her sports bra. And I was like, darn it. Okay, I guess I got to as well. And it was fun.
So what was your first thought when you finished?
Oh my God, let me sit down.
No joke.
Yeah. I mean, it was actually kind of hard to feel any relief because the pain in the feet, and it was intense last 13 miles just because it's on the road. You're almost done, and yeah, it was just, let me sit down, please.
Yeah, it was surreal. I mean, it still is that, even though being back now, just getting back today, yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with Mel, like, let's sit down, but then, like, did we finish this? Is this really happening?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So was the weather good for the most part the whole time? I mean, I know the temperatures looked very mild.
Yeah, weather was great. It seems like when there was wind, it was a tailwind. So I never felt like it was in our face. Lots of sunshine, some mostly cloudy, but yeah, very, very easy going to be outside. Bivvying was super easy. I think we bivvied 4 or 5 times. And that was easy. It was, yeah, definitely way easier than last year.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So did you feel like your plan going into it sort of held throughout, or did it change many times? You seemed like you were keeping on your time schedule like you had thought, but it's easy to say that when you're looking at a dot move.
Well, I feel like after the first 3 days when we met up with each other again, we fell into a rhythm then, which was really easy to hold. You just, we, around 11 or midnight, our feet were just toast and we had to get off. And it's not like you want to sleep more than 4 hours. And so it was like, get down off your feet for 4 and then up early in the morning and just plan on moving for 16 or 17 hours. And so I had a written plan, but it went out the window pretty quickly. Yeah. And then, yeah, just you fall into a rhythm.
So what were you looking forward to most about being back?
Food.
Espresso.
Good food.
All the food.
All the food. All the good food.
Yeah, I wanted an espresso, which they actually had great espresso out in McGrath.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was what I was looking forward to.
So did you end up, I mean, I know there were some nights where it looked like, especially Shell Lake was busy the night you guys were there. Did you spend a lot of time with other walkers?
No, I mean, towards the second half of the race, I mean, there were a handful of people that were around us that we would see at checkpoints. But there was also at least one day where we didn't see anybody. And Shell Lake was busy, but we each got a bed to rest in. So yeah, that was nice.
Yeah. That was probably, I slept at Shell Lake the best, I would say, indoors.
Yeah.
I was exhausted because I came in way later, because that's when me and Melanie finally met up. But yeah, personally, that's where I slept the best.
Nice. So what are your thoughts now? Is this a one and done, or?
It's a little too soon. Too soon. I mean, I've talked to Mel, like we were, different parts on the trail. I think I would be like one and done, but I think for me personally, probably do it again. I still have a sense of aspiration for the 1,000, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how things go, or take a year off, do some lower 48 stuff, and then do it again, and just volunteer or something. Still a little too fresh to give you a definite answer.
Yeah, I would say never say never, but I at the moment I'm pretty sure I might be a one and done. There's other things I want to do, and I don't know. But I mean, never say never. I could see in a few years maybe getting the itch again, but I'm pretty satisfied.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like, I mean, yeah, it's really hard to say. It did sound like the tussocks would be hard, but having not crazy cold weather and wind is gotta be nice.
Well, and with the section from Roan to Nikolai, it was very frustrating. And there were moments I was like, we're not going to make it. Dragging a 50-pound sled uphill over gravel. I wasn't sure I could physically do that for 70 miles. I forgot where I was going with that. What was the question?
It's hard to say 1 year versus the next, like good conditions or bad, but
whenever we would start to kind of get into a bad spot, I'm like, this is still better than 6 inches of fresh snow with snowshoes. Like that, you're going to be moving less than a mile an hour, and your feet are going to be hurting because you're wearing snowshoes for 50, 60, 70 miles. And so I tried to keep that in mind, because we were still moving at a relatively decent pace. We were able to hang on to what we needed to do. It was just super frustrating.
Yeah. So any good stories from the trail that are enough to share?
Well, I mean,
was there 2 a.m. Stacy stories?
No, there weren't 2 a.m. Stacy stories, because we fell into the, down by 11 or midnight, and then up by 4 or 5. But we did notice that Stacy would be a little crabbier in the mornings. And then she would kind of get it back together, and, then she'd be buzzing, and then I would get crabby in the evenings. But it seems like we didn't fall apart at the same time, which was good.
Yeah.
So
guess one quick story, just because it was kind of funny at the time. And when we were going like near the gorge area, because I've never fell through ice, right, or anything. And I told Mel that, everything's been thin and stuff like that. So she guided us through that. And she's like, well, if you fall through, then you'll know. And then she went across, and then I went across and fell through. Like, thanks for saying that, like 2 seconds right before that.
Yeah, I felt awful. I was like, well, the temperatures are warm. The checkpoint's like 8 miles away. If you fall through, like it's a pretty low consequence situation now. Like then you'll have the experience and you'll know. And I turn around and she's standing in water. And I was like, oh no. I was like, oh, I should have just kept my mouth shut.
She made it across, and then I go, and I'm like, what the heck is going on here? And I did everything right, and it wasn't cold, right? I mean, I changed it. We did what we needed to do, but it was just like, but that was also the start of a very bad few hours for me.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, my sled was flipping, this and that. It was one thing after another for me, and I had to take a mental break there in the middle of the trail.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was, yeah. But I thought that was funny. Melanie just said something, and I literally fell, and I'm like, kidding me?
I know. I felt awful. I was like, what can I do? And you were like, just help me get my sled out of the water.
I was laughing so hard that I was almost crying. Like I was hysterically laughing about it.
So how did the sleds handle going over? Because I know, Stacy, just before the race, you got a thicker sled because you were worried about it not handling the burn. How'd they hold up?
Mine did well, obviously, because I bought the thicker one. Was happy with it. It was still, an Alaska Gear company, previously Northern Sled Works. So that it did well. We did see people use those orange sleds and were shredded. But I think any of the sleds worked well, even the lightweight ones. They probably got a little bit more abuse than mine, but I think it was in pretty good shape. I mean, Melanie can speak for hers.
Yeah, mine held up well. There was no holes or cracks or anything. It just seemed to kind of flatten out, and I still haven't figured out why. I don't know if it was because I was sitting on it all the time or what, but it just kind of seemed to lose its structural integrity. But I don't think it had anything to do with the gravel. But I had so much pond debris in the bottom of my sled, just like wet grass, moss, sticks, everything. It was just, everything was dusty and dirty. And, you usually come out of something like that and your gear's still clean because you're just on snow. But our boots and our pants were just nasty.
Yeah.
But the sleds held up good.
So. Good. Still happy with the setups because Stacy, you've got a different setup with the fitted bag. Did your stuff get gross?
My stuff still got not inside. I mean, the bag. I mean, my sled flipped over quite a bit. Poor Melanie was behind me, flipping it over again. But so yeah, it got pretty nasty because it did flip in some mud. And I got debris as well. I mean, you can't. There's nothing you can do about that in those conditions. But as far as like my gear setup, how it was, I loved it. It worked out. The only downfall is I was definitely maxing out the bag. So if it was 20-40 below, that zipper would be very hard for me to zip up in those conditions. So, moving forward, I would definitely have to maybe think about a different bag system probably if we have real conditions for me.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with my setup still. Custom cover from Apocalypse that snaps to the sled. But zipper was real easy and I could get in and out of my bag easy. If I just had to stuff things in and go, I could do that. And yeah, it was great. I didn't change anything as far as that goes from last year and wouldn't change anything going forward.
Nice. Those are most of my questions. I have other questions, but
save those for a Tuesday, Thursday run.
I know. Let's see, Leah, are you still on? Or are you?
Yeah, I am. And I have a question. And that is, if someone were interested in doing the ITI for the first time, what advice would you give them?
Talk to people who've done it, especially multiple years, because again, this was a warm year, so weather-wise, it was in our favor. Things could have been way different, and I can't stress that part enough, temperature-wise.
Have you seen the number of scratches?
It
I
was
have
like
not.
6, right?
It's so low. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It
So this
really
was a
low.
high year and I told Melanie that during the race, this is going to be a high success rate this year,
Mhm.
regardless of the gravel and all that stuff. But I just think, read information about it, read about the history, watch Safety to Gnome, get a little scared.
Yeah, I would say it takes a lot of blind faith. You're training during the race, capabilities, skills, everything, it runs through your mind. Like, am I doing enough? Do I have it all together? And sometimes you're not sure. And like Stacy said, do your research and get a little scared, because things can get very real out there very fast. And like Stacy said, we were very lucky this year, but I remember thinking, like, you put one more weather event in here, moderate weather event, and it changes the whole race. And especially on foot, where there's not a lot of margin for error when it comes to pacing. I mean, you got to keep moving no matter what. But
Great advice. What was your mindset before the race? Having had challenges last year. Like, what were you like? How confident were you that you'd be able to finish? And like, kind of what were you thinking about before the start?
For me, obviously redemption, that's always a thing, unfinished business. But my attitude was way more positive this year. That's what I kept telling Melanie, that I'm really positive. I had some negative thoughts, like when we were going across the burn, because I was looking at the time and I'm like, dang, I don't know if we're going to make the time cutoff because we're going slow. But I still tried to stay positive. But any other time, I knew we could do it. I just knew it,
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I think I had a lot more anxiety this year. The ignorance is bliss was gone. And I knew what I was getting into and how quickly it can go sideways. And so I knew we were prepared. I knew we were capable. I knew we could do it. But like I said, if you throw one moderately difficult weather event in there, and it can, once again, go sideways to where you can't move forward, or you can't move forward fast enough. So I had a lot of anxiety, but once I got out there, I was like, it all just felt like home again. Then, I was like, okay, I know this. I know what I'm doing. And then it really was just take it one day at a time.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And for each of you, like, for how long have you decided this is something that you're committed to doing? Like, when was the idea kind of originally planted, and like, kind of how many years in the making has this been?
I would say for me, I worked at a local store with Tyson, who won the bike division. And so seeing him get into it, that was probably 6 or 7 years ago, that it was like the seed was planted, but it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go do this then. But it was on the bucket list. And then just, then meeting these ladies to get more into winter stuff again. And I was like, oh, this is an option. There's other ladies out there that do this crazy stuff. It's not just me. So, so for me, it's been, I think, a long time coming. And then finally, like, punching it and being like, oh, I just signed up. Great. This is oh, I got in. Oh no, this is happening. So yeah, sometimes you just got to do it and pay the fee and get in. And then it's reality.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just been 2 years, when it was before I had back surgery, and I decided, like, okay, this is something I want to do. But finishing definitely felt like I've been working for this for 2 years. And so that it felt like a longer lead up than just a season of it.
It's funny.
Cool.
I remember the first time I heard about the ITI, I was actually in a book club with Heather Best in like 2009 or 10. And it was gosh, was that? Yeah, I think somewhere in there. And she biked to the book club, and I remember going outside and checking out this bike, and I didn't have a snow bike. I mean, I was just learning to ski. I think I'd only been in Fairbanks a couple years, and she was doing, and she had just gotten this new jacket that, a down coat that was going to keep her alive on the trail. And I remember thinking, what is this crazy thing she's talking about? Like, this sounds, yeah. And it was many years before it became anything that I thought I would be capable of, for sure.
Yeah, same. So my husband's been doing it since 2013. So I've watched him year after year. But we have kids, and at the time they were a lot younger. And so I never thought it was within my reach. And so I didn't really think about it until you do. And then all of a sudden it's like,
until Melanie's on a run telling you, I'm going to sign up for it. And suddenly you're like, well, shoot, if she's going to train for it, maybe I can train for it.
Hell yeah, girls. Love you, ladies.
And then I'm just like, just know that I'm going to be cursing you this entire race.
You can swear my name in vain all you would like. We missed you out there, Erica.
I was compulsively dot watching, but yeah, I was so excited every step where you guys got to really pass, and then you were going to see Sunny at Roan, and then you got to see Amber and Jay and Nikolai, and just, I was excited for you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get my notes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
so last year when we did this, you send your goodie bags out. And of course we get there and we don't want anything that's in our bag. And so I had said this year we should all pack something in each other's bag so that there's some surprise. And so they gave me their bags to bring to Anchorage, and I put surprise in there because I'm like, I don't know if you'll like it, but there's probably as good a chance that you'll like what I packed versus what you packed.
So, the chocolate covered espresso beans, I really enjoyed out there.
I like the Snoopy crackers a lot.
I just know that would bring a smile to your face.
Gosh, it did. It made her very happy.
Yay!
It did.
That's such a fun idea. Never thought about that before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember I rode with somebody who they had like very long written notes, and so we got to hear their notes that they their friends had put in their bag. And I'm not verbose enough to write a long letter, but well, I'm so glad you guys could do this.
I know.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I know you guys, I promised to keep this short because you guys are still recovering and probably tired. And they both just got home like an hour and a half ago, and they haven't seen their family in 10 days. So
right.
Wow.
I appreciate you coming on, and we'll let you guys get back to your families, and we'll do a little recap of the race. And I will run with you guys whenever you're ready to walk again and hear some more stories.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. So you want to go through some updates from the day?
Sure. Yeah. Let's do
Cool.
it.
Yeah.
I made some notes before we got on here. It's exciting. The leaders are smoking.
Yeah, I could share my screen here.
Go for it.
Okay, just a second. Yeah, I feel like there have been like kind of a number of developments in the last day, really.
Sorry, I have a cat who's very determined to be part of the podcast.
Oh, wonderful.
So
what's the cat's name?
This is Bandit. We have Smokey and the Bandit are my two cats. So she lives up to her name.
Wonderful. Good. Well, I'm glad she could join us. So this is how the tracker currently looks. And, zooming out, you can see over here on one side is, the start near Anchorage. And then this is over here, the finish near Nome. Over here, this flag is the end of the 350-mile race. And like I said at the beginning, that race has now concluded. So everyone who's still on the course is in the 1,000-mile race. I guess, do you want to go with what you have, Erica, and I can point stuff out on the map?
Yeah, so we have a group of 3 bikers up front there that you can see. They turned north out of Manalaquite and they're booking up the coast. Don't know if the trail is just that great, or we did get word that there's some good wind coming in Friday and Saturday. So maybe they're trying to outrun the storm, but they definitely are making some good time. And then we've got a group of 6 or 7 that's coming up. They're off the river, making their way to the coast, including the Italian contingent.
The 3 Italians in Perry.
Yeah, so they're doing well. And then we've got 6 or 7 bikers on the river, and including our 2 women in the race. And yeah, there's been all sorts of excitement. This was the first time I've really seen pictures of this. And so if you're Facebook sleuthers, all sorts of cool photos of racers overlapping with the mushers. I've always been curious. So Leah, you've when you did it, did you get to overlap with the dog mushers?
Yeah, and it was like the highlight of the whole 1,000 miles was because I love dogs. I've always had dogs. And I especially love huskies. And it's so cool to be, at the checkpoints and see the mushers taking care of their dogs. Like they come in, they put down straw, the dogs curl up and rest, and the musher goes through and, does stuff to their paws and gives them food. And it's just so fun to see that teamwork between the dog teams and the mushers, and then to see the dog teams on the trail, like it's almost like magical, like, because like when I'm on a bike, it's like you're working for every like inch of forward motion, and then to see this like musher on the back of a sled with this team of dogs, when they have 16 dogs at this point. Lots of them have dropped, a couple. But, these huge teams of dogs, like to me, what it reminds me of is like a sorcerer riding on like a magic carpet, being pulled along by these magically tamed like pack of wolves with this like wonderful symbiotic relationship between like the musher and the dog teams, where it's like, I'll give you food if you pull me. Yeah. It's so, so cool to see. And it's just like silent and graceful and
silent when they're running. But I remember, the sound of excited dogs ready to run, they are just beside themselves. Yeah. It's so funny every time. So, living in Fairbanks, we have, a lot of mushers, and so it's not uncommon to go out, on the weekend and run into not anything like the big dog teams for the Iditarod, but mushers out running their dogs, and it's always fun to watch them go by, and they're happy dogs for sure.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah, I actually this last winter I went on a trip with Melanie and Stacy, and it was one of the kennels brought out their puppies. It was their first time pulling a sled. It was the most freaking adorable thing I've ever seen. They did not mind worth a lick. They were just like, oh, there's this person on the side. And they were totally, she's like, this is done. And so they stopped, and then she got them going again. But yeah, it makes you appreciate how much work they put into getting them to, all do their thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and it's a year-round, thing. It's like being like a farmer and having animals that, need care year-round. I know 2 years ago when we finished, Nick Petit, who's a musher, we had breakfast with him, or we just saw him at the restaurant in Nome where we were having breakfast. So we just like sat with him and talked. And he was saying to us, he's like, okay, how about this summer? Like, I'll come to your house and I'll watch your bikes in your garage, and you can come to my house and watch my dogs.
All the dogs.
Feed them and, scoop up the poop.
Yep.
And all this stuff. So,
well, it was so impressive to see, the first place skier in the 350 was, he had been a dog musher for a while. And I didn't really know him coming into the race, but yeah, I'm curious how much of his being in shape came from running behind, the dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. And his partner is in the Iditarod.
Yeah. I haven't had as much time to keep up with the race, so I haven't seen how she's doing.
I have not seen. I should look her up. Very exciting. Yeah, one of the things that we saw today, there's a group, as Erica's aware, for the viewers, there's a group of women who's kind of doing this like behind the scenes, I think about 8 of us, who are collecting as much information as possible that we compile into the written narratives that come out on a daily basis that are posted to itialaska.com and a couple of other, private Facebook groups. And then also the information that goes into this podcast. And so one of the things that we're doing is we have access, we have like a subscription on Iditarod.com so that we can see the trackers and we can see the live webcams from the checkpoints. And it's really cool. It's the first time that I've had a subscription or paid for a subscription to the Iditarod. I love it. But one thing that we saw on the live feed was there were 2 bikers, like 2 of our friends that were riding along near the dog yard. And so like what we saw on the camera was like a bunch of dogs and then the 2 bikers just kind of like standing up on a hillside, just kind of overlooking all the dogs who are resting and, the mushers.
Yeah, it seemed like such a fun moment. It looked like a beautiful day and just, so cool to be out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. And then also on the tracker, we have, I can share my screen again. For the athletes on foot, we have a number of them on foot and 1 on skis. Eric Bissett is on skis and the rest shown in pink and orange are on foot. The person on foot in the lead is Gavin Hennigan. This is the second time going to Nome. He was the first one on foot to Nome last year. And now he's finally made it to, into Ruby. Actually, it looks like he'll be there in 3 minutes. He's almost to the place he's going to stay for the night. And, that's such a cool milestone to finally reach the Yukon River. And then, these other folks are coming up behind him. And this is a really tough stretch because from McGrath to Ruby, there's one very small town with really no services to speak of. Other than that, there's 2 little log shelter cabins, which are primitive. They have a wood stove, but, not a whole lot else. And then here near Cripple, the racers get a 10-pound bag that they've mailed up in advance of, food or other supplies. But other than that, there's really not a lot. Like up here along the way, there's kind of a ghost town that you go through and a cabin with walls, but no wood stove. And when I was there last year, the door doesn't shut. It was just kind of like blown in with snow. It's a really tough section, and it's I think about 150 miles long of not much shelter. So once you reach the Yukon River, there are villages, great places to stay and schools, and like I said, they're going to see the dogs and then shelter cabins. And the interesting thing about this year is that the dog teams are going to see the racers twice, because what the mushers are doing, they started in Fairbanks and they've come down the river onto the Yukon River. And so they're going to go all the way down along this red line, and then they're going to continue on down south to Grayling, and then Anvik, and then Shagaluk, and then back up to Grayling, and then back up to Caltag, and then following this red line for the remainder of the time. So, they're passing the racers here in this portion of the Yukon, and then after they do this lollipop, then they'll see them again. So some of the racers might get to see mushers twice, which is really cool.
Nice.
Because like I said, that was my favorite part, and it just went by just too fast.
Yeah.
I would have liked it to have lasted a lot longer. So very cool. So great. Well, this has been fun. It's great to hear from those other women. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate you doing that.
Yep.
So to all the listeners, thank you for calling in. We'll be back tomorrow night and thereafter with more updates from the race and more fun interviews with racers and other people involved with the race. So thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Bye.